There's a reason your deepest fears seem to manifest no matter how hard you try to avoid them. It's not bad luck, it's not karma, and it's not because the universe is cruel. It's because fear has a frequency, and that frequency is not just emotional, it's magnetic. What if I told you that every time you feel afraid, you're not just reacting to your world, you're shaping it? That your nervous system, your thoughts, your heart rate are all tuning forks sending signals into the quantum field, and that field, neutral and precise, simply reflects that vibration back to you. This isn't metaphor, it's physics. Welcome to the dimension where emotion equals frequency, and frequency equals form. In this video, we'll uncover the invisible mechanics behind why fear doesn't just sabotage your dreams. It creates a reality where those dreams can't survive. You'll learn what most people get wrong about the law of attraction and why positive thinking fails when the underlying frequency is fear. But more importantly, you'll remember how to break the loop. Because once you understand that your feelings are not private, they're broadcast, you reclaim the power to choose a different channel. And the moment you tune to the vibration of trust, expansion, or peace, the field responds instantly. Not eventually, instantly. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share isn't just information, it's calibration. It's the shift from being controlled by your fear to becoming the observer who transforms it. And once you see the truth about emotional frequency, you'll never look at anxiety, manifestation, or even your identity the same way again. Imagine for a moment that your emotions aren't just personal, they're electrical currents, literal fields of energy radiating from your body and interacting with the fabric of reality around you. This isn't a spiritual metaphor. According to data from the Heart Math Institute, your heart generates an electromagnetic field up to 60 times stronger than your brain's. And that field doesn't stop at your skin. It extends several feet outward, transmitting emotional information to your environment and synchronizing with the nervous systems of others around you. When you feel fear, true body-level anxiety, that signal broadcasts chaos. It scrambles coherence. It tells the quantum field, collapse the timelines that match this instability. That's why fear isn't just uncomfortable. It's magnetic. It draws to you the very circumstances that validate it. Think of it like this. You're not watching reality unfold. You're observing it through an emotional lens. And in quantum physics, the observer is not passive. Observation influences outcome. What you feel is what you focus on. And what you focus on determines which probability becomes solid, real, tangible. This is known as the observer effect, and it applies not just to electrons but to your life. So when you wake up dreading the worst, when your mind rehearses all the ways things could go wrong, you're not preparing yourself. You're broadcasting a frequency. You're literally tuning into the station of what you don't want, and the field responds, not because it's cruel, but because it's precise. That's the key most people miss. The universe isn't responding to your words, your goals, or your vision board. It's responding to your signal. And that signal is emotional, vibrational, embodied. You can't fake it. You have to feel it. Which is why understanding the science of emotional frequency isn't just empowering, it's essential. Because the moment you stop seeing fear as just a feeling and start seeing it as a transmitter, you begin to reclaim the power to change the station. And once you learn to shift what you're broadcasting, everything around you begins to shift with it. Here's the part no one told you. Peace is not a reward for when life finally calms down. It's a frequency, one you can choose even in the middle of chaos. The people who seem most lucky, most magnetic, most effortlessly successful, they're not playing by different rules. They're tuned to a different signal. And the moment you begin to grasp this truth, your relationship with fear changes. You stop trying to get rid of it and instead start recognizing it as a signal. Like static on the radio, that simply means you've drifted off your frequency. And that shift alone gives you back your power. Most people spend their lives reacting to external events, believing that once their relationship, finances, or health improves, then they'll finally feel safe, happy, whole. But in the quantum field, cause and effect are reversed. You don't feel good because things get better because you feel good. The field doesn't respond to what's happening outside you. It responds to what's vibrating through you. So what happens when you begin broadcasting from a place of calm certainty instead of anxious doubt? What opens up when you hold the vibration of already having what you desire instead of constantly looking for signs that it's coming? That's when things begin to shift. Not slowly, instantly. Not because of magic, but because you finally aligned your internal state with the version of reality that holds your desires. Think about it. Every reality you've ever wanted already exists as a potential in the quantum field. It's not a question of effort. It's a question of frequency. The question is, can you stay tuned to it long enough for it to collapse into form? That's what we'll uncover next. The hidden emotional patterns that block your frequency, and the simple practices that recalibrate your signal, so you stop attracting what you fear and start living what you've already chosen. Let's go deeper now, into the circuitry of fear itself. Not just the emotion, but the frequency. When you experience fear, your body doesn't just feel anxious, it shifts biologically. Your heart rate accelerates, your breath becomes shallow, your vision narrows. The amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, fires a survival protocol. That's not random, it's evolution. But here's the twist. Your nervous system can't distinguish between an actual threat and an imagined one. If you're just thinking about being rejected, abandoned, or failing, your body will still release the same cascade of stress chemicals as if it's happening now. And in the language of the quantum field, that stress becomes a signal, a repeated one. Over time, that signal becomes your baseline. You start living not just in fear, but as fear. And when fear is your frequency, the field around you complies. Not because it's punishing you, but because it's obeying the coherence of your broadcast. This is why so many people feel stuck in repeating cycles. Same triggers, same blocks, same disappointments. It's not because they're not trying hard enough. It's because they haven't interrupted the pattern at its source, the nervous system. Here's what neuroscience and quantum biology both affirm. To collapse a new version of reality, you must create a new physiological state. That means calming the survival reflex, slowing the breath, repatterning the heartbeat, shifting the frequency from fear to coherence. Because coherence is not just clarity, it's alignment. It's when your heart and brain sync into rhythm. And when they do, your signal strengthens, your field stabilizes, and the quantum responds instantly. This is not wishful thinking. This is wave mechanics. And the more coherent your internal state, the faster the field reflects it back as external form. So the real question becomes, are you living from a fear frequency you inherited, or one you're ready to rewrite? So how do you shift the frequency? How do you go from broadcasting fear to radiating certainty, especially when nothing in your external world has changed yet? The answer lies in something deceptively simple: awareness. Because the first step to changing a signal is noticing the one you're sending. Most people never pause long enough to realize that fear has become their default setting. It shows up as tension in the chest, irritation at small things, or an endless loop of what-if thoughts. But once you catch it, once you observe fear not as truth but as frequency, you interrupt the cycle. And in that moment, you gain access to something most people never tap into: choice. From there, practice becomes your amplifier. The way you breathe, for example, is a dial for your nervous system. Shallow breathing keeps you locked in the vibration of alertness, survival, and contraction. But deep, slow, conscious breaths signal to your body, we're safe now. And that shift in physiology creates a shift in energy. Try this. Next time anxiety rises, pause and take 3 slow inhales through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Focus only on the breath. This is not just calming, it's quantum realignment. Because in those seconds, you're no longer observing from fear. You're observing from presence. And presence changes what collapses in the field. Or this: when self-doubt whispers, instead of believing it, respond with curiosity. Whose voice is this? Is this fear or my future self preparing me for expansion? That question alone can dissolve the charge. You don't have to fix fear. You only have to stop fusing with it. And every time you do, you reclaim your signal. The more often you do this, redirect breath, interrupt the loop, shift your posture, the more your system remembers what it's like to live from clarity instead of contraction. You stop chasing the feeling of safety and begin embodying it. That's the difference between temporary relief and lasting change. And the more consistently you anchor this frequency, the more life begins to rearrange around you. The next step? Learning how to observe from your future self, not your wounded one. That's where we go next. Let's talk about your future self, not as fantasy, but as frequency. What if I told you that the version of you who already has the life you desire, the one who wakes up with clarity, who feels loved, abundant, and grounded, already exists in the quantum field? Not metaphorically, literally. Quantum physics shows us that all possibilities exist simultaneously as wave functions. Every potential timeline, every version of you is already encoded into the fabric of reality. The only question is, which one are you tuned into? This is where the real power of observation comes in. Because you're not stuck being who you've been. You're always one frequency shift away from becoming someone new. So here's a practice, a portal, to help you connect with that version now. Sit quietly, close your eyes, visualize the you who has already shifted, not the idealized version but the embodied one, the one who walks with ease, who speaks gently to themselves, who trusts the unfolding. See their posture, hear their tone, sense their energy. Now here's the key. Don't just look at them, look through them. Ask, how does this version of me observe life? How do they see this moment? What do they no longer fear? What do they effortlessly expect? You're not pretending, you're attuning, because the field doesn't respond to your hopes, it responds to your identity. The more vividly you feel that version of you, their thoughts, their breath, their presence, the more you begin to collapse their timeline into form. And something even deeper happens. Your nervous system starts to recalibrate. The stress chemistry lowers. Your heart synchronizes. Your electromagnetic field shifts. Why? Because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality if the frequency is real. And in that moment, you're no longer observing from your past. You're observing as your future. And when that becomes your new normal, your life begins to mirror it without resistance. Next, we'll explore why so many people get stuck in the loop, why their desires don't land, even when they visualize, and how to decode the emotional mismatch that silently blocks their manifestations from becoming real. Let's be brutally honest. Most people who try to manifest are doing it from a place of fear. Not consciously, of course. They meditate, visualize, say affirmations, but beneath the surface their signal is still, I don't have it yet. And that frequency, the gap, the lack, the longing is exactly what the field reflects. This is the emotional mismatch. You say abundance but feel scarcity. You speak love but expect abandonment. You act confident, but your nervous system is bracing for rejection. And the field? It doesn't hear your words. It feels your vibration. That's why manifestation doesn't work when you're using it to escape your current state. Because what you're running from, you're still resonating with. And resonance is the real language of creation. Here's where most people get stuck. They confuse thinking about a desire with observing it as real. But the quantum doesn't respond to ideas. It responds to coherence. That means your thoughts, emotions, and body must be in agreement. Anything less and your signal is distorted, like a radio trying to play two stations at once. And guess what that distortion creates? Delay, inconsistency, frustration. So what's the solution? You stop manifesting from desperation. You stop asking, when will it happen? And start asking, how would I be if it already had? That subtle shift changes everything. Because when you become the version of you who already lives the outcome, the field has no choice but to reflect it. This is not positive thinking. It's vibrational alignment. It's the difference between wishing and witnessing. When you observe from completion, not from craving, you collapse that timeline into form. Neville Goddard said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not because it tricks the universe, but because it aligns your signal. And aligned signals don't chase, they attract." So before we move on to the next step, anchoring your new identity, ask yourself this: what feeling have I been rehearsing while trying to manifest? That's the frequency you're living in, and until that shifts, nothing else can. So how do you shift not just your mindset, but your entire signal? How do you reprogram your nervous system so deeply that your new frequency becomes your default, not just a temporary state? The answer lies in embodiment, because the body is not just a carrier of your thoughts, it's the anchor of your vibration. Every belief you've held, every fear you've repeated, every pattern you've normalized, it's not just in your mind, it's in your posture, your breath, your tone of voice. It's stored in muscle memory, cellular response, hormonal rhythms. That's why surface-level affirmations rarely stick. You can say, "I am enough," all day, but if your body is still bracing, clenching, shrinking, the signal being sent is, "I'm not safe." And the quantum field, ever responsive, mirrors that. But here's the breakthrough: the body can be retrained. Just like trauma leaves a signature, so does expansion. You can install new emotional memories, not by forcing, but by feeling them first. Try this. Every morning, before the world gets noisy, sit in silence and breathe as if you already are the version of you who has it all. Not imagining it, inhabiting it. How do they breathe? How do they sit? What don't they worry about? Feel their rhythm. Let your nervous system memorize it. That's how new pathways form. That's how coherence builds. And the more your body remembers safety, trust, and worth, not as a concept, but as a sensation, the more your reality reshapes to match it. Your vibration becomes consistent. Your field becomes magnetic. And here's something neuroscience confirms. The brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and the real one, if the emotion is present. So if you want to live a new life, don't wait for it to happen. Broadcast it from your body now. You're not just visualizing, you're rehearsing a new frequency. You're teaching your cells how to trust joy, how to stabilize in abundance, how to receive without fear. And that level of alignment, that's what bends reality. In the next segment, we'll explore the final calibration, how to hold this signal even when life tests you, and why that's the moment your breakthrough becomes inevitable. Let's talk about the test, because it always comes. The moment you begin to shift your frequency, to align with a new identity, the old timeline doesn't just disappear. It shows up louder, not to punish you, but to ask, "Are you sure?" This is where most people fall back. They think the return of fear, delay, or discomfort means they've failed. But in reality, it means you're close. You're collapsing a new version of reality, and the old one is reacting, trying to survive. Think of it like a radio tower that's been broadcasting one station for years. You switch frequencies, but there's still static. Residue, echo, that's normal, that's expected. But here's the key: your reaction determines what stays. If you respond to fear with fear, you tune back into the old loop. But if you meet fear with observation, with awareness, you maintain your new signal. This is what we call energetic integrity. Can you stay coherent even when doubt rises? Can you breathe as your future self even when circumstances look the same? Because that is when you quantum lock the shift. Not when everything is perfect, but when everything looks the same and you choose differently anyway. That's embodiment, that's anchoring, that's the real test and the real initiation. So when resistance shows up, when your bank account triggers anxiety, when an old relationship pattern resurfaces, pause. Don't panic. Smile. Say to yourself, this is the echo, not the signal. Because your nervous system is simply being asked, will we collapse back into fear or stabilize in the new truth. This is your moment of mastery, not because you force the external to change, but because you've changed your internal response to it. And when the inner response is stable, the outer world must recalibrate. Always. In the final segment, we'll reveal the most powerful principle of all, the stillness that seals the shift. Because once your signal becomes silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of coherence, your new timeline stops being a vision and becomes your baseline. And now we arrive at the still point, the moment when chasing ends and becoming begins, when your internal world no longer vibrates in reaction, but in remembrance. Because the final shift isn't noise, it's coherence, it's silence, not the kind that's empty, but the kind that's full of presence, full of knowing, full of alignment so deep that the universe can't help but respond. You see, when your signal becomes stable, when your body, mind, and emotion hum at the same frequency, you no longer manifest by effort. You collapse reality by resonance. You don't hope for a better future. You broadcast it from your cells, and the quantum field, precise and neutral, bends, not for who you want to be, but for who you remember you already are. So take this in. Your fear was never the problem. It was a frequency, one you tuned into so long it became familiar. But now you've remembered something deeper. You are the observer, the broadcaster, the selector of timelines, and the version of you who lives in clarity, joy, freedom. They're not distant. They're entangled with you, waiting for one thing, coherence. And now that you've tasted it, held it, felt it, you can return here any time, through breath, through posture, through observation, through stillness. This is the home frequency. This is where manifestation stops being a technique and becomes your default way of being. So let this be your declaration, not just to yourself, but to the field. I no longer broadcast from fear. I collapse from coherence. I create from clarity. I live from now. If something in you softened, steadied, remembered, leave a mark. Comment below. I choose my frequency, not as performance, but as permission. Because every time you say it, feel it, become it, you lock in the signal. And once that signal stabilizes, nothing can stop what's already yours from finding you. Not time, not effort, not logic, just vibration, just coherence, just you becoming who you've always been at last.